Hi, good morning from myself too. My name is Anna Apostolopoulou. I am a naval architect and marine engineer from the National Technical University of Athens, and I have also studied Master of Business Administration in the University of Warwick in the UK. I'm currently working in Lloyd's Register since 2004, and I have been dealing with the marine industry in positions both in technical positions and also in business positions. I'm currently I'm participating in the Poseidon Med project, for which I will talk to you about in a while. But before that, I would like to make an introduction regarding the environmental focus that Europe has lately, and in general, the environmental focus of all industries regarding emissions in the atmosphere, regarding the oceans, regarding recycling. One of the alternative fuels that Europe has been identifying so far is LNG, which is liquefied natural gas, for which, before I start my presentation, Ms. Ivoni Damianidou will talk to you about. Ivoni, please.
Good morning from me as well. My name is Ivoni Damianidou, and I'm a naval architect and marine engineer. I work at Lloyd's Register as well as a business and technical support specialist, and my main occupation is around the Poseidon Med, and I am the technical coordinator from the part of Lloyd's Register. Now, before Ms. Apostolopoulou starts her presentation on Poseidon Med, I would like to make a small briefing on what is LNG as fuel. And we have the presentation. So, starting, we will see a video concerning LNG as fuel and some general information concerning its properties. So, LNG as a fuel is an investment that needs to be seen sustainable. And this sustainability can be achieved if the investment is compliant, social, safe, and profitable. This is why the challenges around LNG as fuel need to be addressed. One of the main economical drivers is the availability of LNG worldwide. The United States are transforming its transforming into an LNG export dynamic, and the United States Coast Guard is also developing their regulatory aspect around LNG as fuel. Additionally, Asia is transforming into a bunkering hub, and more infrastructure are being developed in these areas. Also, Europe is constantly developing its initiatives, and more projects are running around the issue of LNG as fuel, such as Poseidon Med. Concerning the environmental drivers, the impact of the 2015 ECA SOx limit change will be magnified by the extent of those areas at that time. This map shows the current ECAs, emission control areas. The existing areas of the Baltic and North Sea have recently been greatly expanded by the addition of the North American ECA, extending up to 200 miles from the coast from 1st of August 2015. The North and Central American SOx ECAs are now in force, with additional NOx restrictions for North America coming into force from 2016. It is impossible to know the ultimate extent of this ECA over the life of a new or existing ship, but it is not impossible that ultimately virtually all coastal waters will become emission control areas. Added to these, there are the implication of any local regulations, such as the EU Sulfur Directive, which themselves will not remain unchanged over the years, and those changes only being in the direction of yet tighter control. In this, it must be borne in mind that too many marine fuel oils may eventually be controlled at the same level of road fuels. The US Caribbean ECA came into force in 2014, and there is also the potential for development of additional ECAs in the Mediterranean Sea, Singapore, and Japan as well. Now, following this brief introduction, Ms. Apostolopoulos will continue with the Poseidon Med project. Thank you.
The title of the presentation is Poseidon Med, LNG bunkering from barrier to solution. We can start with a bit of a history. The success of the sea trials was very marked, and there is every reason to expect that the engines will give equal satisfaction in regular running, and if this anticipation is realized, there is no doubt that many oil engine vessels will be built for trading in parts where fuel oil can be regularly obtained. If we focus on the in parts where fuel oil can be regularly obtained, we can see that in general this was the problem back in, or the issue we can say, back in February 1912, when the first merchant ship to be fitted with diesel engines was Zealandia. This was classified by Lloyd's Register, and this was stated by Lloyd's Register Chief Engineer Surveyor Mr. Milton on board. So, are we maybe facing the same area? things are being discussed about LNG used as fuel, and we will see what we mean in the following slides and in the following discussions today. The agenda of today, we will see a project overview of Poseidon Med 1, Phase 1, the regulatory framework around liquefied natural gas and how it can be built to vessels and to infrastructure. We will talk about vessels installations. We will talk about port infrastructure. We will see into the future, and we will draw also some conclusions. We can see the picture with high-speed 6 and Minoan lines. So, about Poseidon Med. What is basically Poseidon Med? Before I start with the presentation, we have to state here the EU Directive in 2014, in September 2014, number 94, which clearly stated, and it was advised by the European Union, that all member states should have infrastructure, should build infrastructure by 2025 for alternative fuels. One of the alternative fuels was LNG. Poseidon Med, even before that, so the European Union started thinking what we should do to promote LNG and what we should do in order for member states and the various stakeholders understand the value and the use of alternative fuels and what this all means. So they made projects and stakeholders would be funded by them, either by 30%, by 50%, or sometimes this fund could reach 80 or 85% according to the country. Poseidon Med is the first cross-European border project which aims to introduce LNG as a marine fuel, and this for the shipping industry, and develop a sufficient infrastructure network of bunkering value chain. So Poseidon Med looks at two aspects of the relevant industry: the vessel and the infrastructure, meaning the ports, the bunkering operations, etc. It mainly focuses in the Eastern Mediterranean region with 5 member states, which are Cyprus, Greece, Italy, Croatia and Slovenia. It is a partnership between gas suppliers, shipping companies, port authorities, technical organizations, classification societies, and as an example, Lloyd's Register. It is officially included in the Juncker package of candidate projects. You can see below some of the companies that participate. It's Q Energy, Superfast Ferries, Anek Lines, Neptune Lines, Hellenic Seaways, Minoan Lines, all. The port of La Spezia, the port of Rijeka, Koper, the port of Venice, ENMA, Lloyd's Register, Ocean Finance, EP, NAP, Consip are some of the names that appear. To make an overview of the Poseidon Med and talking about the two aspects, the infrastructure and the vessels, we are talking about development of global infrastructure hubs, meaning ports, for the supply of LNG to back increasing demand. As Ms. Damianidou has stated, demand is one of the issues that we are focusing upon. Piraeus, one of the main ports, will be transformed as a hub-spoke hub, which will be linked to other satellite ports in Greece and be established as a bunker station. A third aspect of infrastructure is the risk assessment, review of operations, and establish a safety in port. Safety is one of the main words that appear within the Poseidon Med overview. Sorry about the interruption. Some technical issues. It reminds me of the elections yesterday.
Can you see our screen? Okay, thank you. Okay, you can continue, Anna.
Okay, thank you very much. Vessels. So we talked about infrastructure. Now we are going to talk about the vessel side of putting LNG and using it as a marine fuel. There were 6 vessels to be reviewed at a gas readiness AIP level, as we say in Lloyd's Register, which is the approval in principle level. 2 among them would be in more detail, and this would continue in the second phase of Poseidon Med, which is a 5-year project ahead. We will talk about that as the day goes on. And second one, feasibility of the LNG barge convention. In order for LNG to be loaded in vessels, and to be bunkered, we have to use LNG barges. So, Poseidon Med, the first phase, it involved in total 8 activities. Activity 1, LNG supply and demand, a study on LNG supply and demand. So, what are we talking about? And what volume are we expecting in the future? Secondly, activity 2, legislation and regulatory framework. One of the main activities which has to be studied and solved as soon as possible and from the beginning in order for operations to take place. Activity number 3, LNG infrastructure and installations. We will talk about that in detail. Mr. Bakas and Ms. Damianidou will continue with that for the rest of the day. Activity 4, integrated maritime supply chain for LNG, again studies. Activity 5, which is risk assessment. Activity 6, sustainable financing. The financial aspect should be studied too, of course. Activity 7, local assessments for Napa ports. And activity 8, dissemination, social and private awareness. Last but not least, very important, to get engagement. So, Piraeus Port, first of all, why? You can see the picture of Piraeus Port with many activities. One of the biggest ports in the Mediterranean Sea, one of the biggest ports in Europe. Why should we study Piraeus Port? The port of Piraeus, as the largest Greek seaport, is one of the largest seaports in Europe and the world, located in the Mediterranean Sea basin. The port of Piraeus served as the port of Athens since the ancient times. Today, the port of Piraeus is a major employer in the region, with more than 2,500 employees who provide services to more than 40,000 ships every year. Piraeus Port has container, cargo, passenger and automobile terminals. So the statistics around Piraeus Port: the container terminal, the cargo terminal, the automobile terminal and the passenger terminal. The container terminal has storage of 900,000 square meters and an annual traffic capacity of around 6,200,000 TEUs. The cargo terminal has a storage area of 180,000 square meters and an annual traffic capacity of more than 25 million tons. The automobile terminal in the port of Piraeus has 3 car terminals with a total length of 1.4 kilometers a land area of 180,000 square meters, storage capacity of 12,000 cars, and a transshipment capacity of 670,000 units per year. The passenger terminal now, in the port of Piraeus, which is the largest passenger port in Europe and one of the largest passenger ports in the world, has total traffic of more than 21.5 million people in 2007 and 18.6 in 2014. So, if we come back to the Poseidon Med, as we have described the Piraeus port, and to see how the community has seen and has accepted this project. We participated in the Lloyd's List Greek Shipping Awards in 2014, where we took the Technical Achievement Award. In the EU Energy Ministers Council in Greece, in Cyprus, Greece, Egypt, and there was an agenda there. Inside the agenda, there was Poseidon Med, and in Zapion Conference in the 19th of November 2015. We can see some pictures, some relevant pictures. The actions so far have concerned workshops, discussions, visits, meetings, and contacts with several stakeholders. Among them, technical stakeholders consultation meeting was done in May. You can see relevant pictures. Vessels conceptual arrangements workshops with ARBD's risk assessment workshops in May, July, and September, about 10 or 15, I think. The Piraeus Port workshop with regard to infrastructures and ports on LNG bunkering safe operations back in June 2015. The Limassol workshop on LNG bunkering safe operations in September, so we went to Cyprus too. And the Hellenic regulatory framework was discussed during a workshop with the Ministry of Shipping and Policy back in September 2015 in Piraeus, in the premises of Hellenic Lloyd, and also visits in the premises of various other stakeholders. So the action so far had many aspects, and it concerned many stakeholders, and this was the aim of many of the activities, to engage and to cooperate, engagement and cooperation between us, between the 23 partners. So, Poseidon Med, what kind of methodology did we follow? As far as it concerns the regulatory framework, which is activity 2 of Poseidon Med, we should analyze European Union and global state of play, national legislation, and we should produce a detailed gap sheet. This would be based on the EMSA gap sheet, which was issued last year, and it contained, I think, about 19 identified gaps around the use of LNG as fuel in the marine industry. We should also consult with stakeholders, owners, and come up with tailored proposals. We should analyze and follow up and shape the final outcome to safety and commercial requirements. With regard to vessels, which is activity 3 together with activity 5, we should make a vessels conceptual analysis, basic compliance approvals in principle, with regard to risk assessment, with a graph, based on the graph that you can see, which is the process that we have followed. It's starting with the design and safety statement, then going to the risk assessment. We see if the criteria are satisfied, then the supporting studies are supervised. We go back to risk assessment, there is a monitor cycle there, then revisions are made, and we come up with a final design review. This will be further analyzed by both Mr. Bakas and Ms. Damianidou during the day. With regard to ports, the basic elements of the studies included concept phase layout, ship types, types of operation, different types of operation. We did HAZIDs, which is hazard identification studies, and HAZOPS, which is part of risk assessment, with operations involving ship-to-ship transfer and truck-to-ship transfers. We will analyze that during the technical part of LNG bunkering. We also did other studies around safety zones, around also security zones, around simultaneous operations and navigational assessments. Regarding specifically Activity 2, which concerns the regulatory framework which was examined, we examined and we identified what major threats. Of course, there is lack of consistency. That is why the European Union has put projects like that in order to accommodate the relevant, in order for stakeholders to accommodate relevant gap analysis and identification of the current and the future framework. There was complexity because we were talking about many regulations, both globally and in a European level and in a local level. So local barriers and international barriers had to be identified and assessed. So we started studying the framework. We did gap analysis and we identified the current international regulations with an extra focus in Greek legislation. This was a very difficult part of the study and still continues to be, and it will continue for the next 5 years in order to come up with a robust Greek regulatory framework around LNG as fuel. There were various regulations to study and safety and security issues to retrieve and examine. There have been comparisons between approaches of different bodies, of IACS, which is the International Association of Classification Societies, one of which is Lloyd's Register, SGMF, the Organization for Gas as Fuel, the European Union, the US Coast Guard. So the Americans have played a big role in identifying the regulations, and they now operate vessels with LNG. So we used risk assessment methodologies. We used risk acceptance criteria, and we identified and used local mechanisms to validate risk management. On the right side of the slide, you can see the 19 approximate gaps that EMSA identified, and each of them had to be analyzed. We had to see the regulations around them, and we had to assess what to do and how we can address them in the future. We should address them both by identifying them inside the existing regulations, in the standards that exist. ISO standards are one of them. ESSF has discussed and issued also some of the standards, some of the guidelines. IMO, first of all, with the IGF code being adopted as a regulation in 2017, so we have to be prepared for that. We had to analyze and see all these regulations, we had to study them, we had to identify the gaps inside them, and also find a way to put them inside the Greek regulatory framework. Some highlights and updates. You can see on the right side of the slide many of the regulations that we are talking about. As we said, IMO with the IGF code, IMO with MARPOL Annex 6, METC, the model courses and the training around IMO, relevant MSCs, the SOLAS Convention, which will play also a big role. Also IEC standards, 61, 508, 62, 305, etc. ISO also with a big role in the whole legislation, particularly around equipment. So we created a database of global regulations, papers, guidelines with more than 200 identified by 70 bodies. We try to link these with gaps, with the issues that we have identified and they have been discussed worldwide, with the barriers and with the latest updates discussions from main bodies like IMO, like ISO, like ESSF, SGMF, STCW, which is the body for training issues, US Coast Guard, and IAX. So it was 19-22 initial gaps identified by EMSA and 22 infrastructure reports, port reports that were reviewed. We tried also to link them with issues identified during our workshops that we talked about. We did about around 15 to 20 workshops for vessels and ports, and of course their interconnections in detail. We did also so that we end up with proposals to regulators. There was of course Greek focus, link with the authorities, cooperation with the maritime authorities, synergies, a very important word for the whole, so that we end up with a regulatory framework. And we call this roadmap to legislation. When we say that we worked closely with the Greek authorities, we mean the following actions that took part. Workshops with various ministry departments of the Hellenic authorities. And one of them was the latest workshop this September in order to identify Hellenic legislation barriers, or if there are any showstoppers that would build, in order to build a roadmap to a final practical framework. There were authorities present like directors of ship inspection of the Ministry of Mercantile Marine. There was the Hellenic Coast Guard present, specialists and department heads. There was the Environmental Protection Department, port policy specialists, and other various stakeholders. Also, other ministries' involvement was identified as needed. And the roadmap and the way ahead was agreed after discussions and the workshop that was based also on gap analysis. So, if you can see, this graph explains how the general picture of the workshop of the roadmap that we would follow. Poseidon Med with the leader, Lloyd's Register, Lloyd's Register was involved as a leader in the activity 2. The first step was to identify all relevant legislation and highlight the gaps. The second step would be Hellenic authorities to assign a project team with 3 aspects. 1, to collaborate with Poseidon Med team, so the partners of Poseidon Med. Secondly, to receive comments and the work in progress from the Poseidon Med team. And third, to address and suggest the appropriate service for further action. And third one, to end up with formulating the legislative and regulatory framework for Greece, for construction, for training and manning, and for bunkering. And this to be ready for application in 2017. Now, regarding vessels, going further to the regulatory framework and talk about vessels installations. There were several gaps that were both identified during the EMSA study and during the workshops that we made and the studies that we made, the whole analysis. Simultaneous operations, meaning when the bunkering operation is done, there will be simultaneous movement of people on board, either if it is a passenger ship or if it is training personnel, crew, etc. So there we will discuss about exclusion zones, security and safety zones, risk acceptance criteria, and risk assessment methodology in general. Second gap, quantity gap or issue, critical issue if we can say, around quantity and quality. Ship owners' contribution, training, ship and shore, ship-to-ship bunkering installations, some of the issues that have been discussed. Bunker barge conversions, technical feasibility, IGC code compliance with the Hellenic authorities, gas engines leasing, re-engineering packages, etc. Engine kits guarantees and duplications. Other technical issues involved tank connection space arrangement, vent location, bunkering rates and operations, tank arrangements in relation with IGF provisions, standardizing connections and manifolds, ship type influences decisions, double hull, all high speed, small size, etc. So for each of the ship types, we had to consider different aspects. If we go in detail, I will not go in so much detail in this presentation because this will be further analyzed in the presentations that follow. Minoan lines, Festos Pallas was one of the vessels analyzed during the risk assessment workshop with completion of the 69-point questionnaire of the ARBD process. Despite an ambitious and close space tank location, no major showstopper was identified. So this was one of the vessels that were identified as the ones that would go ahead. Points for further consideration were among others the vent location and the tank connection space access arrangements. You can see on the right the Pallas and also the workshop that took place. Next one, Superfast Ferry, Superfast 1. Same 69-point questionnaire of the ARBT process. This would be an open deck arrangement of LNG tanks. There were points for further consideration as we had to discuss about simultaneous operations and exclusion zones. And there were improved alternative tank arrangements which could result as further to this consultation and cooperation. There was a major showstopper identified in relation with exact port layout and operation. This alarmed us and triggered a preliminary review. Neptune lines, Neptune Galim. Again, the 69-point questionnaire for the risk assessment process was followed, and there were arrangements of LNG tanks in car decks 1 or 2. No major showstopper was identified, and favorable conditions for retrofit were discussed. Points for further consideration were the vent position as well as CMOX and exclusion zones, which was a point identified for the bunker station. There were again improved alternative tank arrangements resulted from this consultation, and a first gas retrofit concept survey on board a Greek vessel was conducted. As a conclusion, a good design to proceed with. We can see again on the right our specialists that came here and discussed with all stakeholders and made the review, and also the arrangement inside the Neptune Galim. Next one, high-speed 6 from Hellenic Seaways. Again, the completion of the 69-point questionnaire, a case that was revealing some problems because we were talking about high-speed ships and also smaller ships with specific arrangements with a double hull, as you can see on the picture. Again, the bunkering station was approximately assessed in the LNG tanks, and the exclusion zone requirements constituted a potential showstopper. Conclusion: more focus to be shed on small designs. Do we maybe need to put something inside the regulations? If we finish with vessels and we start to talk about the port infrastructure, we have to be establishing safety in, of course, the port of Piraeus. Assess the proposed. This means that we have to assess proposed areas, facilities, the ship types that we are talking about, the equipment, of course, and the operational activities, in order to identify the best bunkering operational solution. The layout particularities in the port, meaning there will be variety of operations. The Mykonos, Paros, Naxos Q case. Difficulties in adapting current port operations to LNG. And we had to also assess the defining responsibilities between ports, Coast Guard, authorities, individuals, and of course the case of emergency. We can see in the picture on the right hand the assessment of the port done in July 2015 with Knossos Palas showing in the picture, and also we can see on the left a small bunkering vessel now, and also on the bottom the assessment that was done. It was a 3-day a 2-day assessment inside all with various stakeholders. Again, on the port infrastructure, we had to be establishing the safety in the Limassol port. So we went to Cyprus too. You can see the stakeholders conference in the picture on the right side, and also one picture of the port of Limassol with the container ship. In Limassol, we had to assess the layout particularities of the port. We envisaged offshore support, the offshore support area, the difficulties in adapting current port operations to LNG, and we had to define responsibilities again between individuals, between the port, the Coast Guard, and other authorities in the case of emergency. Other barriers that we should discuss and identify, and we also discussed during the workshops, were the Cypriot legislation barriers and their customs procedures. And we also discussed about the Port of Patras case. If you see at the bottom the picture where you can see the two vessels overlap, meaning if we had the barge, a bunkering barge of LNG, this would need to have a safety zone around the vessel, and the safety zone would overlap with the vessel, which is not appropriate, and we have to find a solution. So we discuss and we see that every case might be an individual case, and we have to act on a case-by-case basis. So the future, the way ahead. In the next phase, a more detailed scope, which is Poseidon Med Phase 2, a more detailed scope is anticipated. Building of a pilot vessel in LNG fuel vessel for the Venice port, first one in the Mediterranean. 10 and probably more vessels approval in principle, and detailed review including both new buildings and retrofits. Continuation and follow-up of the regulatory framework for Poseidon Med, and gap analysis and various gap analysis results even in more detail. For the regulatory framework, we are currently making a deliverable of more than 250 pages, which will be addressed to the Greek maritime authorities, and it will show them the methodology and the way to cooperate and end up with a robust regulatory framework. So there will be studies and risk assessment in 5 ports in total. Also, we will be reviewing shipyard preparedness. Sorry about this, just to interrupt again for some technical issues.
Can you see our screen now? Yes, thank you. Okay, we can continue. Okay, Anna, please continue.
Okay, thank you very much. And so it will be, shipyard preparedness will be also reviewed. If we want to conclude and take some takeaways, take some conclusion with us, the whole project is not just about compliance. It is about building a robust, safe, and efficient operation. Because this is something new, and we have to realize that we have to prepare and be proactive as much as possible. So there will be, when talking about vessels, there will be space requirements versus ship operating profile, and all stakeholders should have that in mind and should cooperate. Engagement. Again, we talk about engagement. This is of paramount importance. So authorities, bodies, stakeholders, ship owners must actively participate since day one. The required investment in time, effort, money must occur in the conceptual phase This involves at least ship, port, and authorities. So again, many stakeholders to cooperate. The gas retrofit concept survey has been an innovative and a very useful tool. There have been synergies with small scale and in a small scale and shore are to be constantly explored in conjunction with relevant regulatory complexities. Again, engagement and again synergies between each other. And of course, really look into synergies to share expertise with West Mediterranean area. Key concluding remarks. LNG as marine fuel is feasible. We have to build a right concept and a scale project which will apply a robust methodology. We are talking about excellent port profiles, very good master plans that already exist and prospects. We are talking about favorable supply and demand. And we are talking about a regulatory regime for the future. We should have societal support. We should have stakeholders engagement. And we are talking about significant upstream and supply potential. So the aim is to develop a healthy, sustainable LNG bunkering and small-scale market. We have to trigger opportunities and be ready for the gas era. Thank you very much.